Truck driver helps shelter animals in hurricane's path find new homes by the Washington Post, adapted by News ELA. There is nothing like a meal at the Waffle House after a very long trip. Tony Alsop can tell you. He stopped to eat after driving more than 60 animals from the South Carolina coast to the southern Alabama inside of a school bus. Alsop is a 51-year-old truck driver from Greenback, Tennessee. He was parked at a Waffle House outside Fayetteville, North Carolina Sunday night for a quick pit stop. He had been on the road since Monday, September 7th. That was when he hopped in his bus and headed toward the coast. Alsop was committed to rescuing as many animals as possible ahead of Hurricane Florence. The storm hit North Carolina early on Friday, September 14th. Inside the bus, the seats have been taken out to make room for the furry passengers. On the bus's side are the words Emergency Animal Rescue Shelter. In the last week, Alsop and his bus have rescued 53 dogs and 11 cats. All of the animals came from shelters that were in the path of the storm. Alsop was planning to search for more. Transporting animals to vacant shelters. I'm like, look, these are lives too, Alsop said during his Waffle House stop. Animals, especially shelter pets, they always have to take the back seat of the bus, but I'll give them their own bus. If I have to, I'll pay for all the fuel or even a boat to get these dogs out of there. Alsop has been rescuing shelter pets from floodwaters since Hurricane Harvey hit the Texas coast last year. He hopes to open his own animal shelter one day. When Alsop saw on the news how numerous animal shelters became overcrowded, he thought he could help. He wanted to transport the animals to vacant shelters. However, he knew he couldn't put them in a semi-trailer. I thought, well, what can I do? He said. I'll just go buy a bus. He has since helped rescue during Hurricanes Irma and Maria. Last week, the crates in his vehicle were stacked from floor to ceiling. Pet food, water bowls, leashes, and toys were scattered about the aisle. Still, as he rolled along his route, Alsop kept telling his Facebook followers that he had room for more. He asked them to point him where pets needed help. No one left behind, Alsop wrote in one Facebook post. Next stop, Wilmington. In less than 48 hours, he stopped at 4 different animal shelters in South Carolina. The St. Francis Animal Center sang his praises on social media. The group said that Alsop was rescuing all the leftover pets. These were the dogs and cats the shelter couldn't seem to hand off to anyone. Once he had them in his bus, Alsop drove to Foley, Alabama. There, his friend Angela Maddox opened her shelter to the new arrivals for the night. She gave them baths and fluffy blankets and spa treatments. Alsop said, these animals were taken care of until Alsop and Maddox could find enough shelters to foster homes for them. They managed to do it in the matter of a day. A few people came to adopt some of the dogs and cats on the spot. Meanwhile, Alsop coordinated with other animal shelters and volunteers to meet him in Knoxville, Tennessee. There, he handed off about 40 other pets. The remaining cats and dogs went off to vacant shelters across the country. After a short rest, Alsop got back on the road Sunday. He drove until he got to the Waffle House. On Monday, he will head to Wilmington, North Carolina, if he can make it there. He said he's heard the roads are closed, that everything is flooded and no one can get through. He heard there was a shelter that needed him, though, so he is going to try. Article 2. Texans flee flooded areas, strangers say. Make yourselves at home. Ann Whitlock Wright and Michael Skelly have opened their home to a converted firehouse in Houston, Texas, to flood evacuees, and are encouraging other Houstonians to do the same. The family from Pasadena, Texas, worried as floodwaters from Hurricane Harvey poured into their apartment's parking lot. The huge storm was bringing rain and flooding all over southern Texas. Fearing for their two small children, they packed a garbage bag of clothes. They escaped to a shelter at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston. Old converted firehouse pressed into service. The family huddled in a corner, still scared. Then two strangers offered to help. Ann Whitlock and Michael Skelly had been bringing hurricane victims to the shelter from a nearby hospital. The couple knew the convention center was filling quickly. They were certain their home, a 110-year-old renovated firehouse in Houston's East End, would be safe from the rising waters. So they brought home the family. If it was a woman who had immigrated from Mexico, her two daughters, her brother, and a family friend. Then Skelly posted a Facebook message urging others to take people in, and so began the chain of help in Houston, as the nation's fourth largest city struggles with the effects of a fierce storm. Chain reaction of kindness. There's no way that the city can come up with a shelter for all these people, said Skelly, a 55-year-old wind power businessman. All across the city, people are offering up their homes. One of Skelly's co-workers saw his post and decided to take in a father from Iraq and his 4 children. Then Skelly and Whitlock's son Oscar, age 23, called. He had discovered a disabled woman and her elderly mother who needed help. They were going to wait in the rain at the convention center line. Whitlock told her son to bring the 2 women to the firehouse. They could eat and relax there. The 56-year-old Whitlock then arranged for them to sleep in a nearby home she and her husband rent to someone else. Devoted to public service. Whitlock and Skelly are known in Houston as risk-taking couple, devoted to public service. They met in 1988 after serving in the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps is a U.S. government group. Volunteers go around the world helping people in need. The couple married, had 3 children, and lived internationally before settling in Houston. Skelly made a small fortune at a wind power company he started. Whitlock runs a nonprofit that reinvigorates neighborhoods. The couple moved in 2015 from a rich neighborhood to the old firehouse. Their new house is in a poorer part of the city where many immigrants live. Sleeping on air mattresses, eating donated tortillas. And since heavy rains and winds began hitting Houston, they take in strangers. We opened our doors, and they opened their doors to us, said Raphael, a 33-year-old factory worker who was part of the family that Skelly and Whitlock brought home from the shelter. Air mattresses were pulled from the attic so everyone had a place to sleep. The owner of a nearby restaurant heard about the couple's efforts and donated tortillas, meat, and other food. Skelly and Whitlock said they were encouraged by the example of past Houston Mayor Bill White. White led the city when Hurricane Katrina slammed into Louisiana 12 years ago. Houston took in thousands of Katrina refugees who now call the city home. Everybody has to help others sometimes, Whitlock said. Duct tape the sheet to the baby. Stories of goodwill could be found across the region. About 10,000 people filled the convention center shelter, and city and county officials opened additional enormous buildings to house more evacuees. Abby Kaler, her husband, and their newborn left their home in West Houston before the storm. They went to stay with her parents outside the city. When that area flooded Tuesday morning, she sent a Facebook message for help. A friend rescued them in a blow-up watercraft. Kaler had to wrap 3-week-old Emily in a bedsheet and duct taped her to her body for safety. They ended up in the home of longtime friends who were out of town. Kaler said neighbors came to their aid with diapers, wipes, and bottles for her daughter. I've never even met these people.